and I put it away. So she said, why? If you ever decide you're going to give testimony, write an outline, put it away. Okay? Drug the outline out last weekend, last Saturday, because last Sunday, because Jeff headed to Davis at the house myself. I had my laptop at home, so I pulled my outline out, and I started writing. What I had in my outline did not match what God laid on my heart. And when the night of Bible study, I wrote down, because there's parts of my story I'm very embarrassed by. And I've been judged for it, but it is what it is. I can't change the past. I can only go forward. So I get my speech. I get my testimony wrote out speech. I took a speech in grade class, anyway, in college. So I get my testimony wrote out, and I print it off, and I bring it home. And Tuesday night, I bring my dogs in the house because it was storming and my one freaks out. He was medicated anyway. So I read it to my dogs until I could read it without crying, okay? And it took me about 3 times to get through it, and the third time I was going through it, I was making corrections and edits and this and that and everything. So I'm going to tell you all, you ever stand up here and give your testimony, which Justin, you're going to do it next week, and I want to be in here to hear it. But anyway, that's just my suggestion to you all. Okay. Digger, in case you have no idea what I'm going to say, didn't run up to the Pastor Mark has no idea what I'm going to say. Nobody in this room has any idea what my testimony is about. Not even my husband, because I just anyway. He'll probably see it on YouTube. There we go. So I called it Testimony of Truth by Tara Clark, dated June 5th, 2025. Okay. My story doesn't start with I grew up in church or my grandma took me to church. In fact, it doesn't even include being in church on a regular basis. About 99% of life before Oklahoma, a church building was a landmark reference to somewhere to turn to get somewhere else. I remember going a few times, and I remember I made a turkey out of pine cone and feathers because it was around Thanksgiving. I asked Mom about it about 10 to 15 years ago. She threw it away. I was mad. Oh, pine cone turkey. Anyway. I also remember church groups coming through one of the towns I lived in and doing vacation Bible school. One of my Girl Scout leaders took me to church a few times, but outside of that, I did not hear about God or the Bible. My testimony tonight is about how I grew up, what I went through, and how God has changed my life. It's not a past I am proud of and don't talk about because it's been used against me by quote-unquote friends, family, and even some church people. I am here because 2 people met in a bar, enjoyed hanging out together, we've been together, then Mom found out she was pregnant with, she was expecting me. After I was born, my parents got married. I didn't do anything. After I was born, my parents got married, and a few years later, my little brother came along. I don't remember much about him because I was about 4 when he was born, and he did not live long. The main artery to his heart was not developed, and he died. I have a few pictures of him and I together, and I vaguely remember a preacher coming to our house to talk to my mom and dad about the funeral, and then the service itself. He's buried in Berwick, Utah, and I have not been back to his grave since we moved in 1979. I don't even remember him being mentioned a whole lot while I was growing up. I grew up moving around a lot because my dad worked in the oil fields, so when we moved. I started kindergarten in Barrow, Wyoming in 1979, which is like a population of, and ended kindergarten in Bags, Wyoming in 1980, which was maybe a population of 1,000. Maybe that's not much. We stayed in Bags several years, and that is where I had my first introduction to vacation Bible school by the groups that came to town a couple of times in the summer. Mom thought it was a great activity for me because I was around other kids, but nothing would reinforce at home that it was over. I even attended a small church a few times located in Bags, but Mom never came with me because she worked on Sunday. I didn't know how to do a lot of things for myself, like tying my shoes, which I learned in kindergarten after the teacher called my mom. Cutting my own meat with a knife because my dad said I didn't pay attention and would hurt myself. Ordering from a menu because Mom always orders for me since I took too long, or keeping up with my stuff because Mom did it when we went somewhere. I was the kid no one wanted to take anywhere because I was helpless to do some basic things most kids do every day. If we went to a place I didn't normally eat and Mom wasn't there, ordering was a major challenge because I didn't know what I might like. Now I realize a lot of me not being able to do some of those things for myself was my mom compensating for losing a child. I also remember Dad started drinking more shower, and he would be physically abusive to my mom. I woke up one night not realizing what he was doing, and I was angry at my mom and thought she was getting what she deserved because that's what I was told when I was in this bed. I even remember telling my dad to hit her again, but I had no idea what I said was wrong. I did not know it was domestic abuse, and my dad should not be hitting my mom. Another time I woke up to my parents fighting, and my dad had jerked my mom's arm to the point she couldn't move it. We took her to the clinic, and where they treated her. She had broken blood vessels in her arm and some other problems, so they put it in a sling. Dad sat in the waiting room with me, and it was then that I realized my dad was not the great guy I once thought he was. I felt awful for telling him to hit her when I woke him up that night several weeks ago, and I told my mom I was sorry. I was about 8 or 9 years old when that happened. Shortly after that, the bottom fell out of the oil field, and my dad moved to Rock Springs, Wyoming for work, but rarely came home. When he did, him and Mom fought a lot, and the house was very tense. By this time, we lived out of town, and I learned how to entertain myself playing outside, reading, and having make-believe friends. Dad didn't always send money home to pay bills or buy groceries, so Mom fed me where she worked. She worked at it's a motel/restaurant/bar in Bags, Wyoming. She was the maid of the motel, and that's how we were able to eat. Our power was shut off because Dad didn't send money home to pay the bill, and I remember going for about a week with no power for anything. Mom wrote Dad a letter telling him power had been shut off. I don't know if he ever sent money home to pay the bill, but somehow we ended up with power back on. And I started 4th grade that fall in Bags, Wyoming, and had no idea how my life was going to change after school started. One night, my dad came home with a semi and flatbed trailer and said we were moving to Rock Springs the next day. I was checked out of school and all of our stuff was packed onto the flatbed and moved to Rock Springs. Dad had rented a storage shed for our stuff, and that is where it went until we moved into an apartment. In the meantime, I did not go to school and we lived in our camper next to the shop my dad worked at. We had no running water and no way of bathing or using the bathroom. We went to the convenience stores to use the bathroom when we had to go. I don't remember how long we stayed there, but at some point we rented an apartment and moved into it. I went back to school and thought life might be good again like it was when I was younger. Little did I know things were about to go from bad to worse. We had a bus stop at the apartment complex, and my dad would occasionally watch it while I was out there waiting for the bus. I never knew he watched until one night when he asked me about a couple of boys that climbed on the roof of it and jumped off. He was convinced I was involved somehow, and from that point on, he watched the bus stop every morning. At night, when he got home, he would ask me who the kids were that I talked to, what we talked about, and what building we lived in. He would accuse me of lying if he didn't like my answers. I started taking a book with me to the bus stop and reading it while I waited for the bus. Kids would try to get me to talk, and I would keep reading. The interrogations from my dad when I talked to them wasn't worth it. I didn't play or hang out with any of the kids we lived in the apartments with, but still he treated me like I was always doing something wrong. If I mentioned anything that happened at school involving someone being in trouble, he accused me of being involved and trying to blame others so I wouldn't get in trouble. It got to the point I wouldn't talk about my day, and if I was asked how it was, I would say it was fine. I remember one night my dad came home drunk and mad at the world. He asked where the broken slippers I had on came from, even though he was home when I opened the gift on Christmas morning. His anger was so bad, he hit my mom several times and cut her face. She wanted to go to the hospital and get stitches, but he told her he would rip them out and cause her to need more. Mom changed her mind on going to the ER, and eventually I went to bed. That night I realized when he was drunk, he did not remember events that happened when he was sober because his mind was clouded. The next day, Mom did everything she could to hide the cut on her face so people wouldn't ask. When Dad saw what he had done the next day, he chilled on his drinking for a while. We lived in the apartment for about a year and then moved to a trailer court that was in a different school district. I was able to finish elementary school where I was enrolled because the administration said it was okay. Mom or Dad drove me to school and picked me up for a couple of years. Dad's drinking got worse, and there were nights he would not come home because he cheated on my mom with other women. She would find the phone numbers in his pockets when she did laundry. He would make it a point to get home, get a shower, and leave before Mom and I got home from stuff we were doing. When he didn't have the money to go to the bar, he would buy his beer and bring it home and drink. On those nights, he would sit at the table drinking until Mom and I had done homework. Sometimes I tried to be funny and get my dad to be the guy I remembered when I was younger. Occasionally it worked and he would be nice, but most of the time I would see the look on his face and I knew I needed to just let him talk to his beard. Some mornings I would wake up and see how he had trashed the house during one of his rages. Mom's plants would be knocked over, some of the flower pots broken, and she was exhausted. She got to where she wouldn't clean it up before he woke up so he could see what he had done. He would slow down on the drinking for a while and then pick it back up again. At times, Dad would not have money for alcohol, and after 3 days, he would start detoxing. He would sweat like crazy and be extremely hateful. Dad refused to admit he had a drinking problem and said Mom and I ruined his life. I remember being told he married my mom because of me and he really didn't love her. By this time, I was in junior high and had mentioned my dad's drinking in class. A friend invited me to Alateen, and it was there I started learning my dad's drinking and physical abuse of my mom was not my fault. I had to quit going because getting a ride was difficult, and my dad started suspecting it wasn't a Girl Scout activity like I told him it was. My 13th birthday was approaching, and Dad always bought great gifts for my birthday and Christmas, so I was pumped. My birthday present for that year was a waterbed, and I was happy. I had finally graduated from the twin bed I'd had since I was about 2 or 3 years old to a full-size waterbed. I was asked if I liked my gift, and of course I said yes, it's perfect. It was at that point I was told it would be my last birthday present I received because my 14th birthday I would be homeless. I thought he was joking and laughed until I saw the look on his face. He said he was tired of raising me, and once I turned 14, I didn't have to stay in school, so he didn't have to support me. Keep in mind, I was an A and B student who never got in trouble at school and tried to do my best at home. It was then I realized when my turn of abuse by my dad was going to start. Mom waited until the trailer we lived in was paid for before she filed for a divorce. I was in the 7th grade, and Mom had checked me out of school and Dad was serving the papers. I had no idea what was going on because Mom didn't tell me, so it was her way of protecting me. Dad was served divorce papers in the bar, and we did not go home for the next couple of nights. We stayed with some friends that my dad did not know where they lived. Dad was allowed to get his things out of the house while the sheriff's deputy was present. Of course, the whole story of he would change and try to talk Mom to take him back and on, but she held her ground. Dad finally got the hint and moved on. He would remarry and divorce 2 more times after my mom left him. Sorry, during this time, I had a Girl Scout leader that was a great Christian lady. She would take some of us to church if we spent the night on Saturday night. It was there I heard more about Jesus, but still had absolutely no idea who he was or what questions to ask. I would love to say life was happily ever after when my parents divorced, but that would be a lie. Mom never sought counseling to help her deal with the mental, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of my dad. Instead, she took her feelings out on me. She never physically abused me, but mental and emotional abuse became her thing. I was constantly compared to her friends' kids and how they dressed and acted. I was asked why I couldn't be more like them. She didn't get the point. We didn't hang out together at school, and we didn't talk to each other at school because we ran in completely different groups. I couldn't tell her anything that happened at school involving her friends' kids because she would call their moms and tell them what I said. I just wanted to talk about my day and tell her what happened, so once again, I quit talking about anything that went on at school. If I was asked about my day, I said it was fine. Mom's friends would talk about what their kids did, like drinking, sneaking out, smoking pot, all the things. And Mom would accuse me and my friends of doing the same thing because the friends' kids said everybody was doing it, so we had to be doing it as well. We were the nerds in school, okay? We were the A kids. That's what we did. My senior year of high school, I started making some bad decisions because I was tired of being accused of doing things I really wasn't doing. I had a scholarship to college and blew it off because I was not emotionally prepared to be in college. My whole life had been lived under a microscope, and I did not know how to function any other way. I got introduced to my daughter's father and didn't think too much about it at the time. A couple of years passed, and we crossed paths again. By this time, I was looking for an escape from my mom and her constant criticism, and he was it. We started dating, and shortly after, we got married in the judge's office because I got tired of my mom telling me how to plan a wedding him and I were trying to plan. She wasn't paying for it, but she wanted me in charge. About 3 months after we were married, I discovered I was pregnant with my daughter. The mental abuse had started, but I didn't realize it because he didn't drink like my father. I did go back to college and finish my degree, which is one thing he insisted on. One day, I received a phone call from the manager of the place we lived and was asked if I knew what was going on. And I said, sure. I'll go work. Get this for you. It was then I found out he was bringing his girlfriends to the house while I was at work. I was devastated and brokenhearted trying to figure out what I had done. I had grown up believing everything bad that happened in the house was my fault, so this was my fault as well. His mom helped me move out and get into my own place. We stayed separated for a few months and then moved back in together again. Within a few months, we both agreed it wasn't working, and he helped me move into my own apartment. Little did I know the emotional and mental abuse would escalate. I started dating someone else, and he went nuts. He stalked me, and I filed a restraining order. About a week after I filed the restraining order, he showed up at the parking lot across the street from where I lived. I called the police, but by the time I got there, he was gone. They found him in the area with a loaded gun in the vehicle. My daughter and I were taken to the local safe house where we stayed for 3 days, and then I went back home. She was about 18 months old and doesn't remember any of it. After that incident, it was determined by law enforcement, friends, and myself living alone was not a good idea. So I moved back in with my mom. He would still see my daughter occasionally, but would use her as a tactic to mentally and psychologically abuse me. She would go to his house and come home in dirty diapers and dirty clothes. His reasoning was he paid child support and I should send everything she would need because he already paid for it. At times, he would go for months on end without seeing her because I might go out with friends to the bar. We didn't have a lot of options for entertainment in Rock Springs that I was aware of, and I grew up with social drinking as the norm. Moving in with mom brought more criticism than before. I was a young single mom with a mountain of debt and working 2 or 3 jobs to pay it off. Instead of being supportive, she would tell me everything I was doing wrong and how she gave her life up for me, and I needed to do the same for my daughter. I tried explaining I was 13 when she got divorced, and my daughter was barely a year old. I had a completely different set of expenses and bills to pay, but that didn't matter. She was tolerating us being there because not only did I have bills for my divorce to pay, but I also had emergency tonsil surgery and I had no insurance. I say tolerated because she made sure to tell me she had a life after I moved out, and she wasn't going to adjust anything to help me with child care. After a while, I quit trying to date anyone because all I found were mentally and emotionally abusive, controlling men. I decided I didn't want to be like some of the kids I went to school with whose moms moved in with whatever guy and they never had a stable home life. I also decided I wanted a job where I didn't have to depend on men for financial support. Doors were open and I went to work at Halliburton. I finally had the financial freedom I wanted and I bought my own home. My daughter's father tried snaking his way back into my life and I shut him down. He finally got the hint to leave me alone and moved out of the area. I remember one night after I had spent about a year by myself, following a last-ditch effort at a relationship with another guy, I looked at the sky and said, God, if you are real, send me someone that will love me for who I am and love my daughter as well. After a couple of years working in the mechanic shop at Halliburton, Jeff Clark started traveling with a group called Special Services. He was a mechanic on one of the crews, and I dealt with him on occasion. One day, he popped into the office, or he was in the office, he popped off about me going on a motorcycle ride with him and then ran out of the shop office and ended up smoking the whole season. The guys I worked with teased me about being mean to a nice guy. And I did have a reputation for being mean because I was there to do a job and not find a date, so some of their teasing was appropriate. Jeff called me later that day and said he should have waited for an answer before he ran out. I told him sure I could go, and off we went. That was the beginning of the best years of my life. We dated for about a year and then got engaged, and were engaged for about a year before we got married. He flew my daughter and I down to meet his family for Thanksgiving in 2004, and I told him he would probably be disowned after they met me. The voices in my head about not being good enough for his family had returned. We spent the weekend with his family, and they were so welcoming and loving, I didn't believe it was true. We got married on August 6, 2005 at Comanche First Baptist Church, and his cousin did the ceremony. My daughter started coming to church with Ray and Sue, and I would attend occasionally. Sue invited me to sing in the choir, and I remembered how I enjoyed singing when I was in elementary school. I started attending more faithfully because I had made a commitment and did my best to keep it. Our Christmas special was approaching, and I started really listening to the music and what it talked about. Sunday school teachers also answered some of my questions, and I really dug into the Sunday school literature because I wanted to learn more. Tiffany Ellis sang a solo called Have You Any Room for Jesus? And it was then I realized what was missing in my life. I came to the front and gave my life to Jesus January 8, 2006, and was baptized on January 22nd, 2006. Jeff was out of town working when I came to the front, so I wanted to be baptized the first Sunday he was home from that rotation. The years that followed have not been easy, but they have been the best part of my life. I have two men in my life that love me for who I am. God, who knew how he would use this broken mess I call life, and Jeff, who took on an independent single mom with a red-headed daughter. God is done with my story, and I need to quit trying to steal the pain. Mom does not understand why I do what I do, and at times she is very hurtful with her words. I struggle to remember the Bible says, honor your father and mother. It says nothing about doing it because they are honorable parents. My dad is buried in Comanche Cemetery, and that's a story for another time. I now have a family I can call mine that loves me even when I'm too much for myself. God is amazing and has taken me out of my comfort zone more times than I care to count. He has molded and changed me into the person I am today. My past is the past, however, I also know it's important not to forget so I don't let old habits and Satan trip me up. I pray God uses my testimony of truth to help you deal with some of the demons we wrestle with today. If anybody has any questions, I laid out a lot here. I did.
I got a question.
Okay.
Today, how do you still deal with your childhood? I asked these questions, so you know.
Yeah, I kind of figured that out. Thanks. The times when those voices start talking again, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not that person anymore. I'm no longer there. When Jeff and I got divorced, so this is a side story, because when I say Savannah's father, that's my daughter's name, when I say her father tried to snake his back way into my life, what I mean is he figured out I had a job where I could pay for a house, I could pay for a car, I could pay my utilities, I could pay daycare, and he just thought he could move right back on in and he could have his job and his money would be his money. I was like, no sir. But I'm Savannah's dad. I said, it's convenient for you when you're Savannah's dad. Go on, get lost. So when Jeff and I got engaged, and I still talk to his brother and sister-in-law, and we're still friends to this day. We talk, we text back and forth occasionally. We're friends on Facebook, everything. I keep up with each other. When his brother Billy found out I got married, he told me, he said, Terry, he said, you're not going to be able to stay here, you know that. I said, yeah, I know. And so that's also part of what led to me in Oklahoma. A friend of mine that went up to Wyoming with me in 2021, her and I met for lunch a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about it, and she goes, you know, she goes, when I went up there with you, she said, I figured out that place was not good for me. And I said, no, it really wasn't. You know, so God literally changed my entire life. Completely. And it hasn't been easy, and it's been very hard. And so now you guys understand why I broke down and what my Bible said. And some of the things I said.
I have a question. How long did it take?
I really haven't. That's the honest answer. I really haven't. As a matter of fact, tonight I dropped off groceries at your house, and let's just say there's some more things crazy. But the Bible says, honor your father and mother. repeat that in my mind. Honor your father and mother. Honor your father and mother. It's not, I can't give you an easy answer, Brittany. I can't. And I can't tell you that I've forgiven her because I haven't. I mean, it's hard, but I know part of it is Pastor Mark and Leanne and I talked about it, that as our parents age, sometimes they revert back. So at times I'm dealing with a 2 or 3-year-old and an 82-year-old woman's body. So I remember that as well. So it's tough. And I'm an only child. So I don't have anybody else I can call up and say, yeah, take mom. It's me and me. So it's rough. I'm not gonna lie, it's rough. I carry a lot. Anyone else? Okay.
Out there.
But I told when Tara, I asked Tara, she would give me testimonies from this. Before she even broke down crying. One day she was kind of talking to me about it. I told her, I said, you'll be all right. You just gotta continue. Right? Tara, I'm proud of you. I know that first testimony is always hard. It is very hard. Okay. Next week, Justin is going to be giving his testimony. I know he's got a good one. I haven't heard it. I read some of it that he gave me. He's got a good one. It's going to be good. Tara, I appreciate you. I don't know how that was. I'm glad you got that out. Now maybe God will be calling you to share it with some other people. Okay, so I'm going to give you all a choice tonight. Y'all want to go stronger, or y'all just want to go weak? Okay. Everybody's looking at each other. It's going to be crazy. Here's what we're going to do. Now raise your hands if you want to go smaller. Okay. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go weak. Thank you, Terry. Hold on a second. Very quick. Let me get a chance. We give out these bracelets for your testimony. Here you go. It's just a reminder that you're your testimony. Nice. Thank you, Lanisha, for that up there.
Oh, I forgot to turn it off.
It's alright. It probably went off by itself. I don't know.
Thank you for not doing it.
I can put it off. I can put it on. Refresh out.